There was once a large village of the Micmac Indians of the eastern Algonquins, built beside a lake. At the far end of the settlement stood a lodge, and in it lived a being who was always invisible. He had a sister who looked after him, and everyone knew that any girl who could see him might marry him. For that reason, there were very few girls who did not try, but it was a very long time before anyone succeeded. This is the way in which the test of sight was carried out. At evening time, when the invisible one was due to be returning home, his sister would walk with any girl who might come down to the lake shore. She, of course, could see her brother, since he was always visible to her. As soon as she saw him, she would say to the girls, "Do you see my brother?" "Yes," they would generally reply, though some of them did say no. To those who said that they could indeed see him, the sister would say, "Of what is his shoulder strap made?" Some people say that she would inquire, "What is his moose runner's haul?" or "With what does he draw his sled?" And they would answer, "A strip of rawhide," or "A green flexible branch," or something of that kind. Then she, knowing that they had not told the truth, would say, "Very well, let us return to the wigwam." When they had gone in, she would tell them not to sit in a certain place, because it belonged to the invisible one. Then, after they had helped to cook the supper, they would wait with great curiosity to see him eat. They could be sure that he was a real person, for when he took off his moccasins they became visible, and his sister hung them up. But beyond this they saw nothing of him, not even when they stayed in the place all the night, as many of them did. Now, there lived in the village an old man who was a widower, and his 3 daughters. The youngest girl was very small, weak, and often ill, and yet her sisters, especially the eldest, treated her cruelly. The second daughter was kinder, and sometimes took her side, but the wicked sister would burn her hands and feet with hot cinders, and she was covered with scars from this treatment. She was so marked that people called her Woodjigisk, the rough-faced girl. When her father came home and asked why she had such burns, the bad sister would at once say it was her own fault, for she had disobeyed orders and gone near the fire and fallen into it. These 2 elder sisters decided one day to try their luck at seeing the invisible one. So they dressed themselves in their finest clothes and tried to look their prettiest. They found the invisible one's sister and took the usual walk by the lake. When he came, and when they were asked if they could see him, they answered, "Of course." And when asked about the shoulder strap or sled cord, they answered, "A piece of rawhide." But of course they were lying like the others, and they got nothing for their pains. The next afternoon, when the father returned home, he brought with him many of the pretty little shells from which wampum was made, and they set to work to string them. That day, poor little Woodjigisk, who had always gone barefoot, got a pair of her father's moccasins, old ones, and put them into water to soften them so that she could wear them. Then she begged her sisters for a few wampum shells. The elder called her a little pest, but the younger one gave her some. Now, with no other clothes than her usual rags, the poor little thing went into the woods and got herself some sheets of birch bark, from which she made a dress, and put marks on it for decoration, in the style of long ago. She made a petticoat and a loose gown, a cap, leggings, and a handkerchief. She put on her father's large old moccasins, which were far too big for her, and went forth to try her luck. She would try, she thought, to discover whether she could see the invisible one. She did not begin very well. As she set off, her sisters shouted and hooted, hissed and yelled, and tried to make her stay. And the loafers around the village, seeing the strange little creature, called out, "Shame!" The poor little girl in her strange clothes, with her face all scarred, was an awful sight. But she was kindly received by the sister of the Invisible One. And this was, of course, because this noble lady understood far more about things than simply the mere outside which all the rest of the world knows. As the brown of the evening sky turned to black, the lady took her down to the lake. "Do you see him?" the Invisible One's sister asked. "I do indeed, and he is wonderful," said Woodjegisk. The sister asked, "And what is his sled-string?" The little girl said, "It is the rainbow." "And, my sister, what is his bowstring?" "It is the Spirit's Road, the Milky Way." "So you have seen him," said his sister. She took the girl home with her and bathed her. As she did so, all the scars disappeared from her body. Her hair grew again as it was combed, long, like a blackbird's wing. Her eyes were now like stars. In all the world there was no other such beauty. Then, from her treasures, the lady gave her a wedding garment and adorned her. Then she told Woodjegisk to take the wife's seat in the wigwam, the one next to where the Invisible One sat, beside the entrance. And when he came in, terrible and beautiful, he smiled and said, "So we are found out." "Yes," said his sister. And so Woodjegisk became his wife.